Baller. Be all you are. You know, as I continue to make these videos, the motivation behind these videos is not for monetization. It's not so I can be recognized. It's because there is just a force inside of me that simply cannot control this. There's a force inside of me that just has to express this. And I spent my whole life trying to run from that. And no matter how much I ran, it just called me. And always has. See, to be inspired, it always talks to you. Simple things that people can't relate to. Like the first time I saw Moana with my little girl. You know, that epic scene when she's talking to her grandmother. When you have that in you, it talks to you. Because Moana's grandmother was talking to me, and I was Moana. See, the process of individuating or self-actualization comes with the realization that there's something in life that you can do with less effort than the average person. So if that is the case, then everything says you should do more of that. At some point, I'll start to let you guys in on the workouts. But it's all about mentality first. Before you think about what it takes in the gym, you have to understand that what you bring with you to the gym is not your weightlifting bag, but a plethora of different life experiences that can be your greatest source of inspiration. But if you go to the gym and you have nothing, you're going to have a hollow lift, like one who has no experiences in life, but understands the right things to say. Hollow. You know, not containing any substance. Potential, but lacking any matter, space. Humble beginnings. When I go back and I think about my relationship with my dad, some of my greatest gains have come from the beauty of that relationship. You see, once upon a time, I hated my father. I hated him. I blamed him for everything in my life. Everything. It was all his fault. I could have made it to the NFL, but you. I could have done this, but you. I could have done that, but you. And then one day, I remember, I thought to myself, why am I putting guarantees on life? Because what I'm saying is, if in fact things happen this way, then I would be that way, right? That there was a guarantee that I'd be in a better position. How? How is that possible? To anybody listening, when you start to remove judgment from your life, and you start to see things for what they are, the process of trial and error exists in most people. People are trying, people are failing, people are succeeding, but they're going through the process. I watched an interview with Jeffrey Dahmer, and I'll never forget. I listened to the interview, and I'll be honest, I heard a man that was truly honest about what he did. He wasn't trying to glorify it. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, you guys are looking for a reason. Almost matter of fact, like, you guys are looking for a reason. Like something that happened in my childhood. But you're not going to find anything. And then what he described, I'll never forget. I saw it so vividly. He described the force of habit. You see, he talked about, at an early age, he had these thoughts. And those thoughts turned into impulsive thoughts he couldn't control, and then they turned into desires, and one day he chose to act out that desire. And if you could look at Jeffrey Dahmer at some point in his life, he was more Jeffrey Dahmer and less of that. By the end, right before he was arrested, he simply became more of that habit and less of himself. It overtook him. It possessed him. It controlled him. And I thought to myself, every human being is subject to going through that exact same experience. Making a habit out of something, not just drugs, things that are highly dopaminergic, but a habit out of anything that we do. So when I go back to my father, I developed this idea that had things been a certain way, I'd be a different person. And I realized, no. Had things become quote unquote more favorable, I could have become a worse person or more worse person, because life has no guarantees. But the one thing that you have is willpower, which is simply control of the very next step you take. And you continue to do that. Working out, running. It's about the exercise of willpower. I can, I will, therefore I am. And I never forget, I sat there and you have these points of introspection. And I would advise you, people, turn the music off sometimes, right? Turn the distractions off and be still and just know that the God in you is working. Just listen to your thoughts. Listen. Be introspective. Think about things. Think about your life. Reflect. Krishna says that sometimes reflection can be a more powerful tool than prayer. I think he's right. Reflect. So I reflected a lot on my relationship with my father, and I realized that I destroyed my relationship with my father because I allowed expectations to dictate, to supersede the beauty of reality. I want to say that again so you guys can really understand what I'm saying. The expectations that I created destroyed the beauty of reality. The irony is, as I'm driving right now, this is one of my dad's favorite things to do. And when I was a kid, I wanted him to do things that other kids did with their fathers. I wanted him to take me go-kart riding. I wanted him to take me to throw a ball around. I wanted him to do what I thought, or what I defined as father-son time. And what I didn't realize at that age is he was willing to do something that I value more than anything. He was willing to give me his time and concentration and his focus. And the more I began to understand what that was, the more I realized that this is exactly what love is. It's a certain type of focus, a level of concentration that you give something when it has your undivided attention. And for whatever reason, it leads to some sort of prosperity. Because that's what love is. Love is some form of accelerated growth. That's what it does. When you love a plant, it seems to expedite the growth process. And he was willing to give me that. And then I realized all those times that my dad said, let's go for a ride. He was saying, let's go go-kart riding. How many people do you see right now? They go out to eat. They look at each other. They don't say anything. But then they go on social media and they post out to eat with the hubby. Were you? Or did you just do it so you could gain other people's approval? When did other people's opinions matter more than yours? So, I realized in order for me to do this the right way, I had to first understand that my opinion of me should supersede anybody else's opinion of me. But rule number 2, be your own worst critic. It means that anything someone tells you should not be a surprise because you're already under construction, working on that, learning from it, growing from it, building. Take constructive criticism. I learned all of these things somehow by my relationship with my father, because when I removed expectations, when I removed the idea of what he should be and began to embrace what he was, I began to build a relationship centered on reality and not destroyed by expectation. And, I try to keep these videos under 10 minutes, but I think I'm going to exceed that this time. My father passed away 2 years ago. And when I tell you he's my greatest source of gains, my greatest source of inspiration, one of the reasons I'm having this conversation, one of the reasons I'm posting this is in honor of him. It was April 3rd, 2021. At that point, I was about 4 months of no alcohol. I never had a problem with alcohol, but in the name of trying to support the people you care about, I chose to go on a journey and remove alcohol from my life. And I was 4 months into it, and I was going to get up. It was a Saturday morning, and I was going to go run. And I heard Marvin Gaye in my head. I'll never forget it. Very vivid memories. And I sat there for a minute, and I thought to myself, well, hold on, what is this? I need to call my dad. And I picked up my phone. I went downstairs because something motivated me to call my father, and that's exactly what I did, except before I could call him, there were 2 missed calls. One from each of my sisters, and it said, call, it's an emergency. I can't really begin to tell you what took place in the kitchen, but I can tell you that before I made that call, I sort of looked over my shoulder and I thought about what took place in the kitchen, and I thought to myself, did he just say goodbye to me? Because I think that I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to make these calls and someone's going to tell me that my father's no longer with us anymore. And that's exactly what happened. And let me tell you, before you can deal with it, to go through the stages of grief, when you lose somebody all of a sudden, you have to deal with this shock. I can't even grieve. I can't even go through denial. I'm in shock. Maybe to some extent, some type of derivative of denial, but I'll tell you what, it was shock. And I sat there and I reflected on the last conversation that I had with my father. And in that last conversation, he really wanted to spend more time with his granddaughter. And you know what I did? I made excuses like most people do. You want to know why? Because I thought I had more time. I thought I had more time. Really. More time. And I remember driving out to his house to pick up his things. And I timed it. And I realized it only took me 28 minutes to get to his house. And I thought about all the mornings I got into the car and I drove to the gym, which took me about 24 minutes. And guess what? For an extra 3 minutes, I could have done more to facilitate the relationship that my father wanted to have with his granddaughter. But because I believe that death inspires, my mom is the greatest benefactor of that, because I make sure that I can be of service, because it's about what I can provide. My mom doesn't have to worry about seeing her granddaughter, because I'm going to make that happen, period. And I do that in memory of my father. But I hated him as a kid, people. I hated him. But as I got older, I realized the lessons I learned from him grew a lot like those perennials did, right? And the lessons I learned from my mom, they were like weeds. They grew with little to no nourishment. But the things I learned from my father, once they matured in life, one of the first things I did is everything that I hated him for, I made sure to laugh with him before he passed away. You see, I knew that the time I had with my father was finite. So one of the things I did, and I'm encouraging everybody else to do the same thing, forgive. I don't want to hear this, forgive and don't forget. That's not forgiveness. Forgiveness is letting go and setting yourself up to be hurt again. That's what vulnerability is. And vulnerability is key to a relationship. I want to say this again, and I want to reiterate. Relationships don't grow without vulnerability. So I want you to challenge yourself to do one important thing. Get over yourself and stop being a victim, and realize that that time you have really is finite. And understand the value of reality and accept it for what it is. Oftentimes I hear people saying, my dad should be, your dad or your mom, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Maybe you should do what you're supposed to be doing instead of worried about what they should be doing. And I knew this. Because when I realized that my dad had nothing to do with my life being where it was, I took ownership. And I called my father up, and I remember quoting this Bible verse. Now, just because I'm quoting the Bible, people, I want you to understand that if it resonates with you, that's all that matters to me. It said, honor thy mother and thy father, for thy days will be long and prosperous. Well, I told my father, when I was a boy, I spake as a boy, but when I became a man, I put away all childish things. I looked at him and I said, I'm sorry, but I see things from a man's perspective, and I want to tell you that you're my hero. And I mean that. Because I see the sacrifices you had to make just to put me here. I've never been to prison. I got good credit. I had no children. Never been to jail. Maintained a job. And I started thinking to myself, what has he done right? Well, he's done a lot, because I'm a product of that too, right? I started to see things from a different perspective, and just like that, before I knew it, I was looking back in time and realizing I simply chose to look at my life from a different lens. And I saw all the good things my father did, and I realized, oh my God, this whole time, he's done nothing but love me. But my expectations of reality have blinded me from the beauty of the truth. And we began to talk, and we began to build relationships. And the first couple of times I would speak to him, it was kind of awkward. But like anything, you get better at it. And pretty soon I realized I was a lot like him. We would talk about music together, and passion, and poetry, just great works of art, all kinds of things. And it got to a point to where I could see my dad's name on my phone and be excited. It's never too late. It's never too late to rekindle that relationship. But if you think you have more time, I'm here to tell you, you don't. But in order to get to that point with my father, we had to go through that same process. I had to grow up. You see, it's not my father that changed. It was I who changed. I couldn't tell you, and I can't tell you if he changed, but I can tell you I changed a lot. And when I changed, everything around me changed. And when I began to honor my father and my mother, I can tell you that my days have been long and prosperous. And I can also tell you that after he passed away, I'll leave you with this. I saw this movie called Thor Ragnarok some years ago. And I love the end of it. You see, it's real title on Thor. He's fighting the goddess of death herself, and he cannot win. And the movie's basically about what I went through with my father. Trying to prove something to him. Trying to prove that I'm worthy. And then she asked Thor that question, what are you the god of? And he reflects, he goes to that dimension, and he sees the All-Father there. And he's on his knees. And he says, without my hammer. And he says, what are you, the god of hammers? That hammer wasn't the source of your strength, but only means to tap into it. But Dad, I'm on my knees now. Just fix the problem. Just fix it. Fix it, please. Not good enough. He tries to give him that insightful advice that fathers give, but that's not good enough for Thor. And instead, what does he say? I'm not as strong as you. And his father, the All-Father Odin, says, wrong. You're stronger. Now, when I saw that movie 7 years ago, it was a cool scene. I loved it. It got me excited. But when I saw it after I lost my father, I realized that was my father talking to me. Because my father was a great man. He could do great things with his hands. He's repaired a lot of things in my house. And I had this grandiose idea that I was going to put a pool in my backyard. Don't get it twisted, people. $500 pool that goes above the ground. But the issue is I had to level the ground out, and I'd never done that before. But I knew that my father could do it. And there was something in me that said, you know what? You can do it. But I'd never done anything like this before. So I went and YouTubed it, researched it. And finally, the day came that I said, I'm going to have to put the spade in the ground. And that's what I did. I put the spade in the ground, and I began to remove the sod and level the ground out, and my creative flow started to take place. I'm like, I'm going to make a square 18 by 18, put the 18-foot or 18 diameter pool in this square. I'm going to put mulch around it. And I was in over my head. Well, ironically, the last time that I'd ever gone to Home Depot was with him at that very store. And I'm overwhelmed at this moment. I'm overwhelmed because I don't know how I'm going to get this done. I don't know that I can do this. And I started thinking about all the times my dad could do things just like this that I couldn't do. And I needed him at that very moment, people. I just needed my dad. I needed him. I needed him to tell me what to do. And I missed him. And as I'm at Home Depot, all of a sudden I hear this music playing. And what do you know? It's the same song I heard when he passed away. Except, you know what I heard? I heard him say, "No, son, you're stronger." And I went to Home Depot and I knew that I was going to complete that pool. The hottest times of the summer, I did not care. I went and grabbed a Bose speaker and I played nothing but music of my father to, in his name, build that pool. And that's exactly what I did. I built that pool, and when it was time for me to take it down, you know what? I left it up. You want to know why? I left it up to remind me of what I'm capable of if I just put the spade in the ground. That is a true story. I haven't written any of this down. I don't care about editing. I'm going to give it to you raw. And that pool became my greatest source of inspiration because currently right now, my father, his death, through my father's death, there's so much life in abundance because of him. And I'm going to continue to let my father inspire me, even through death, because through me, he still lives. And if you make that commitment to build your relationship with your father or your mother and to see them for what they are and learn to appreciate them for what they are, I guarantee when they pass away, everything that they told you will turn into gold. You know, that finite stuff that only occurs with the explosion of a supernova, that. And that's what my father became to me, and that's what his words became. They became gold. So if you want to go into the gym, you got to find the things in life that inspire you, and you need to be reminded of them. Just like fathers get around bonfires and they tell old stories, do the same to yourself. Just sometimes get in the car and reflect and watch how you can light that flame. And just like I built that pool without a worry of water or anything else, guess what? You can do the same thing, because you got to look deep within yourself to find the source. And once you realize that it's been there the whole time, baller, be all you are.